The gritty symphony of the job site was a familiar cacophony to Elijah, steel striking steel, the guttural roar of machinery, and the sharp, barking orders of supervisors cutting through the dust-choked air. Amidst it all, he moved with a quiet efficiency, his hands, strong and calloused, laying bricks with a precision that went largely unnoticed. It was during his lunch break, a brief 30-minute reprieve, that the true architect of his mind emerged. While others sought shade and loud camaraderie, Elijah would find a quiet corner, retrieve a piece of scrap wood or a discarded cement bag, and with a worn pencil, sketch. Not idle doodles, but intricate lines, thoughtful angles, nascent blueprints of structures that lived vividly in his imagination. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe quiet genius always finds a way, hit that like button and subscribe for more. His current supervisor, a man named Mark whose voice always seemed to carry an edge of derision, often saw these lunchtime activities. "Still playing with your drawings, Elijah?" Mark would scoff, a smirk playing on his lips. "Focus on the muscle work. That's what you're paid for. Some guys just ain't built for thinking." Each word was a small, sharp stone, adding to the wall of underestimation Elijah faced daily. He was, in their eyes, just muscle, a reliable pair of hands, nothing more. They never paused to look closer, to see the profound intelligence in his steady gaze, the visionary spark that his rough sketches barely contained. His silence, born of observation and a deep well of patience, was consistently misinterpreted as limitation. But what happened next would change everything. Elijah's journey into the world of construction hadn't been a deliberate choice, but rather a path dictated by circumstance. Years ago, his dreams had been filled with the soaring lines of innovative buildings, the intricate dance of form and function. He'd devoured library books on architectural theory, marveling at the minds that could conjure cities from imagination. He'd even started a few community college courses in drafting, his talent immediately apparent to his instructors. But life, as it often does, intervened. Family responsibilities, the pressing need for a steady income to support his young daughter, Maya, had steered him towards the more immediate opportunities in manual labor. The dream hadn't died, though. It had merely gone underground, nurtured in stolen moments, sketched on his scraps, waiting. His hands, which could lay a perfectly true line of bricks, also knew the language of design, the subtle poetry of structure and space. He carried a quiet dignity, a resilience forged in the fires of necessity and quieted ambition. His emotional landscape was a complex terrain of muted hope, persistent diligence, and a father's unwavering love. Maya was the sun around which Elijah's world revolved. Her bright, innocent drawings, taped to the peeling paint of their small apartment walls, were a constant reminder of the future he was striving to build for her. He wanted her to know a world where her talents wouldn't be overlooked, where her voice would be heard. Every evening, after a grueling day on site, he would dedicate an hour to his real work, refining his sketches, studying online resources, teaching himself the complexities of modern architectural software on a second-hand laptop. This was his sanctuary, his true vocation. The primary antagonist in Elijah's daily life wasn't a single malicious entity, but rather the pervasive, casual dismissal embodied by men like Mark. It was the systemic assumption that a black man in a hard hat was there for his brawn, not his brain. Mark, in particular, seemed to take a perverse satisfaction in reinforcing this stereotype. Elijah remembered one specific instance vividly. He'd tentatively shown Mark a sketch for a more efficient way to organize material storage on site, a small thing, but thoughtfully designed. Mark had glanced at it, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, before letting out a short, barking laugh. "Stick to stacking, Elijah, not designing, Leave the big ideas to the college boys." The memory still stung, not because of the insult itself, but because of the casual certainty with which it was delivered, the unquestioned belief in Elijah's inherent limitations. The construction site itself was a microcosm of this attitude. Dust hung perpetually in the air, coating everything in a fine, gritty film. The noise was a constant assault, a backdrop of aggressive energy against which Elijah's quiet focus stood in stark contrast. His apartment, though modest, was his haven of order and creativity. Clean, meticulously organized, with his drafting table taking pride of place in the small living room. It was here, away from the condescending gazes and the physical toll of the day, that Elijah could fully inhabit his identity as a designer. Even on the job, his meticulous approach to bricklaying, The almost artistic precision in his work was a silent testament to his deeper understanding of structure. It was a subtle foreshadowing of the architect within, a hint that his potential far exceeded the narrow confines of his assigned role. Then came an afternoon that started like any other, under the oppressive heat of the summer sun. The usual controlled chaos of the site was momentarily stilled by an unexpected development. A sleek black car pulled up, and out stepped Mr. Harrison, the lead architect of the firm responsible for the entire development project. His visits were rare, usually reserved for major milestones, not routine inspections. A ripple of nervous energy went through the crew, supervisors suddenly more attentive, their voices a decibel lower. Mr. Harrison, a man in his late 50s with a sharp, discerning gaze, moved through the site with an air of quiet authority, his eyes missing nothing. Elijah, on his lunch break, was in his usual spot, a piece of plywood balanced on his knees, sketching a solution for a tricky roofline he'd been mulling over. He was so absorbed he didn't notice Mr. Harrison approaching the makeshift break area, a cluttered space near a stack of unused pallets. Pinned to one of the pallets, almost hidden behind a discarded safety vest, were a few of Elijah's more detailed sketches of small, innovative modular housing units, ideas he'd been refining for months. Mr. Harrison, having completed his brief discussion with the site foreman, was about to leave when his eye caught the edge of a precisely drawn line. He paused, his gaze drawn to the unassuming papers. He stepped closer, curiosity piqued. What he saw were not the idle scribbles of a bored worker, but designs of surprising sophistication, with clean lines, innovative use of space, and an intuitive understanding of material. He saw the same meticulous care in these drawings that he'd subconsciously noted in the flawless section of brickwork he'd passed earlier, a section he now realized Elijah had been working on. For a moment, Elijah, looking up and seeing the renowned architect scrutinizing his personal work, felt a jolt of panic. His first instinct was to snatch the sketches away, to mumble an apology for the clutter. But then, a deeper, quieter resolve settled in. These weren't just doodles, they were a part of him. Mark, noticing Mr. Harrison's attention, hurried over, a forced, obsequious smile plastered on his face. "Just some of Elijah's scribbles, Mr. Harrison," he said dismissively, waving a hand as if to brush them away. "He likes to tinker. Don't worry, he doesn't waste company time on it." Mark shot Elijah a warning glance. But Mr. Harrison didn't look at Mark. His eyes remained on the sketches, then moved to Elijah. "These are your designs?" he asked, his voice neutral, yet carrying an undeniable weight. Elijah met his gaze, his heart pounding, and simply nodded. "Yes, sir." Mr. Harrison picked up one of the sketches, studying it intently. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Mr. Harrison spent several minutes examining the sketches, his expression unreadable. He asked Elijah a few pointed questions about material choices, about the structural integrity of a particular design element. Elijah, though nervous, answered with quiet confidence, his deep understanding of his own concepts evident in his precise, thoughtful responses. Mark hovered nearby, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by a wary confusion. He clearly couldn't reconcile the muscle he routinely belittled with the articulate designer Mr. Harrison was now engaging. Finally, Mr. Harrison handed the sketch back. "Interesting ideas, Elijah," he said, a subtle note of respect in his tone. "Do you have more of this work?" Elijah, caught off guard but sensing a sliver of opportunity, replied, "Yes, sir. At home." Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. "Perhaps you could bring some in tomorrow. I'd be interested to see them." He didn't offer praise or promises, just a simple expression of interest, but for Elijah, it felt like a lifeline. The next day, Elijah arrived on site with a carefully curated portfolio of his best designs. Mark, having witnessed the previous day's interaction, watched him with a new, less certain kind of hostility. He couldn't openly mock Elijah in front of the other workers as easily anymore, but his resentment simmered. He assigned Elijah to the grimiest, most physically demanding tasks, perhaps hoping to break his spirit or make him reconsider his newfound attention from the lead architect. But Elijah endured it, his focus on the slim chance Mr. Harrison represented. During his lunch break, he presented his portfolio. Mr. Harrison reviewed it with the same serious attention, occasionally asking clarifying questions. He was impressed by the breadth and depth of Elijah's self-taught knowledge. As a small, informal test, he described a minor design challenge they were facing with the site's temporary office layout, a problem of maximizing limited space while ensuring efficient workflow. He didn't ask Elijah to solve it, merely mused about it. Elijah took this unspoken challenge to heart. For the next few days, during every spare moment, on the bus, during lunch, late into the night after Maya was asleep, he worked on a solution for the office layout. He saw it not just as a technical problem, but as a human one. How could the space better serve the people using it? He observed the current, inefficient flow of personnel during his breaks, noting bottlenecks and wasted steps. His solution, sketched on a fresh piece of card, was elegant and practical. When he shyly presented it to Mr. Harrison a few days later, the architect studied it, a slow smile spreading across his face. "This is very good, Elijah. Very good indeed." Mark, who happened to overhear the compliment, scoffed under his breath, muttering something about a lucky guess. The small success with the office layout, however, only seemed to fuel Mark's resentment. He started making pointed comments within earshot of Elijah about people getting too big for their boots and sticking to what they know. The pressure was subtle but constant. One afternoon, Mark confronted Elijah directly as he was cleaning his tools. "Look," Mark said, his voice low and menacing, "Mr. Harrison might be amused by your little hobby, but don't get any ideas. You're a bricklayer. That's what you are. That's what you'll stay. This is a man's world, and it has rules. Don't go thinking you can just draw your way out of your station." The threat was clear. Stay in your place. Elijah felt a familiar wave of discouragement. Mark's words, echoing years of similar dismissals, struck a nerve. Was he being foolish? Was this brief flicker of recognition just a cruel tease? That evening, looking at Maya's hopeful face as she showed him her latest drawing, a crayon skyscraper reaching for the stars, his resolve hardened. He wasn't just doing this for himself. He was doing it for her, to show her that dreams, even those buried deep, could find their way to the light. He remembered his own youthful passion, the almost physical ache he felt when he saw a beautifully designed building. That passion was still there, undiminished. He would not let Mark's bitterness, or a system designed to overlook him, extinguish it. A week later, Mr. Harrison sought Elijah out. He looked troubled. He mentioned, almost as an aside, a significant and persistent design flaw in the plans for a new community center project the firm was undertaking. It was a prestige project, but this one issue, related to sustainable energy integration and community accessibility, was proving intractable for his team. He wasn't asking Elijah for help, merely thinking aloud, perhaps, or unconsciously testing him further. But for Elijah, it was as if a door had been thrown open. The community center, a building meant to serve, to uplift, to bring people together. It resonated deeply with his own values. Elijah knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this was his moment. He didn't ask for permission, didn't seek approval. He went home that night, and, with a surge of focused energy, began to work. He retrieved all his notes on sustainable design, his sketches on accessible public spaces. He understood the community center wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about creating a heart for a neighborhood, a place that welcomed everyone. For days, he poured every spare ounce of his intellect and passion into it. He bought proper drafting paper and new pens with money he'd been saving for a small treat for Maya, explaining to her that this was for a special kind of building. He slept little, fueled by coffee and an unshakable belief in his vision. He analyzed the problem Mr. Harrison had described, saw its complexities, and then, piece by piece, began to construct a solution that was not only innovative but also deeply empathetic to the community's needs. His design integrated passive solar principles, rainwater harvesting, and a flowing, intuitive layout that ensured easy access for people of all abilities, all while maintaining a striking, modern aesthetic. It was, he felt, the best work he had ever done. The architectural firm, meanwhile, was facing a critical deadline. The client presentation for the community center was less than a week away, and Mr. Harrison's team was still at an impasse over the very design flaw Elijah was now tackling. The atmosphere in their sleek downtown office was thick with tension. Elijah knew he couldn't just walk in. He needed a plan. He thought of approaching Mr. Harrison directly at the construction site, but the environment wasn't conducive to presenting something so complex. He considered sending an email, but feared his work would get lost in the digital shuffle or dismissed without proper consideration. He needed to present it in person, to explain his thinking. He decided his best chance was to go to the firm's office early one morning, before the day's chaos truly began, and hope to catch Mr. Harrison. It was a gamble. He had no appointment, no official standing. He was just a bricklayer with a roll of blueprints. The morning Elijah chose was gray and overcast, mirroring his own nervous anticipation. He dressed in his cleanest, most presentable clothes. Under his arm, he clutched the roll of blueprints, his heart hammering against his ribs. He walked into the impressive lobby of Harrison Architectural Group, a space of cool marble and glass, feeling acutely out of place. The receptionist looked at him with polite skepticism when he asked for Mr. Harrison. "Do you have an appointment?" she inquired, her tone professional but distant. "No," Elijah admitted, "but it's important." "Regarding the community center project?" He saw a flicker of recognition at the project's name. After a brief, hushed phone call, she directed him to wait. Each minute stretched into an eternity. Finally, Mr. Harrison himself emerged from a hallway, looking surprised to see Elijah. "Elijah? What brings you here?" Before Elijah could lose his nerve, he unrolled his blueprints on the edge of the reception desk. "Mr. Harrison, I know this is unorthodox," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "But you mentioned the problem with the community center. I had some ideas." As Elijah began to explain his drawings, laying out the innovative solutions he'd devised, Mr. Harrison's initial surprise gave way to focused attention. He leaned in, his sharp eyes tracing the lines, his expression growing more intense with each detail Elijah revealed. Just then, Mark, who had been summoned to the office for a completely unrelated site matter, walked into the lobby. He stopped short, his eyes widening in disbelief as he saw Elijah, the muscle, confidently presenting detailed architectural plans to the head of the firm. "What in the world is going on here?" Mark blustered, striding forward. "Elijah, what do you think you're doing? This is a professional office, not a construction site." Mr. Harrison silenced him with a raised hand, his gaze never leaving Elijah's blueprints. Other architects, drawn by the unusual scene in the lobby, began to gather at a respectful distance, their curiosity piqued. Elijah, momentarily flustered by Mark's interruption, took a deep breath and continued, his voice gaining strength as he described the integrated sustainable systems, the multifunctional community spaces, the way his design fostered inclusivity and connection. He spoke not just of lines and materials, but of purpose and human experience. He laid out how his design solved the complex accessibility issues while enhancing the building's aesthetic appeal and energy efficiency. His fear was still present, a knot in his stomach, but it was overshadowed by the clarity of his vision and the pride he felt in his work. He knew, deep down, that this was right. This was true. When Elijah finished, a profound silence filled the lobby. Mark stood gaping, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning humiliation. The other architects exchanged impressed glances. Mr. Harrison slowly straightened up, a look of profound respect on his face. He picked up one of the key drawings, holding it as if it were a precious artifact. "Elijah," he said, his voice filled with a new warmth, This is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You've not only solved the problem, you've elevated the entire concept." He turned to the gathered architects. "This," he announced, his voice resonating through the space, "is the solution we've been looking for. We're using this design for the client presentation." Mark looked as though he'd been struck. His attempt to discredit Elijah had backfired spectacularly, exposing only his own prejudice. Elijah felt a wave of emotion wash over him, relief, validation, an overwhelming sense of having finally, truly been seen. In the immediate aftermath, as the initial shock wore off, Mr. Harrison firmly shook Elijah's hand. "Thank you, Elijah," he said, his eyes conveying a depth of gratitude that words couldn't capture. There was a quiet moment of shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the journey Elijah had undertaken. The weight of years of being overlooked seemed to lift from Elijah's shoulders. He could breathe. Later that day, Mr. Harrison announced to his senior staff that they would be implementing a new initiative to actively identify and nurture talent among all their contracted labor, ensuring that no potential was dismissed out of hand due to preconceived notions or job titles. The next morning, Mr. Harrison formally offered Elijah a position as a junior architect on his team, starting with the community center project, with full credit for his design contributions. He also offered to sponsor Elijah through the remaining courses he needed to become a fully licensed architect. Elijah accepted, his voice thick with emotion. It wasn't just a job, it was the realization of a lifelong dream, a chance to build a new future. He knew the path ahead would be challenging, filled with learning and growth, but he felt ready, his quiet determination now recognized and affirmed. A few weeks later, Elijah stood on the construction site of the community center. The ground was being cleared, the foundations marked out according to his blueprints. He wasn't there to lay bricks this time, but as a member of the design team, his own hard hat now bearing the logo of Harrison Architectural Group. He watched as the first forms were set, a quiet smile playing on his lips. That evening, he told Maya the full story, showing her the official blueprints with his name on them. Her eyes, wide with wonder and pride, were his greatest reward. She took out her crayons and began to draw a picture of the community center, adding a little figure she said was her daddy, standing tall beside it. Elijah looked at his hands that had known the roughness of bricks and mortar, the precision of a pencil, and now, the honor of shaping a community's heart. He was no longer just muscle, he was an architect, his quiet genius finally given its voice, his blueprint redrawing not just a building, but his entire world. This is where their story finds its new beginning, a testament to talent that refuses to be silenced. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.